I heard her laughing on the phone. Her voice was softer than it ever was with me. And that's when I knew she wasn't with us anymore, she was there. It was Sunday. The air smelled of butter and lavender, her signature serniki, the ones she made when everything felt especially good. In those early hours, it seemed like nothing had changed. Warmth in the kitchen, the quiet sizzle of the pan, her hair loosely tied, the scent of honey hanging in the air. Almost like the days when we were still on the same side of the story. Almost. Then she stepped out onto the balcony. Didn't say why, just walked out, as if to get some air. But I heard it. Not the words, the tone. The intonation that didn't include me. Laughter. Pure, warm, light. That's how she laughs, only with those who haven't disappointed her yet. I sat at the table and waited. Part of me hoped she'd glance back, see, and pause. Say something. Break something. But she came back as if nothing had happened. Asked if she should add cinnamon. I nodded. But inside I heard a crack, like the floor that used to feel like concrete was giving way beneath me. Later, when she went to shower, I was looking for the charger. Didn't find it. But I found a napkin folded as if forgotten by accident. On it, in thin, firm handwriting with black ink. Rules we live by: 1. Don't lie. 2. Don't fall in love. 3. Don't look back. Our rules. Our once bold vows. We made them in a hostel in Budapest over cheap pizza and wine from a plastic bottle. Back then, it felt like freedom. Now like betrayal carved out with a ruler. How can I not fall in love when I no longer know how to breathe without her? How can I not look back when the past bursts in with the smell of morning coffee? At night she slept peacefully. Turned her back to me as if there was nothing that deserved eye contact. Her side of the bed a soft mess like it had held warmth. Mine smooth, almost untouched. As if I had never been there. I stared at the ceiling. Didn't think, just listened. To the silence between us. And in that silence, for the first time, a question emerged. What if she already chose? Just didn't tell me. In the morning, everything was as usual. Almost. Except the mug in the kitchen was unfamiliar. White. With black letters, freedom. Not from our set. Not from our story. She left earlier than usual. No glance. No touch. No goodbye. And I stayed. With the coffee. And a word that once meant love. And now meant only emptiness. I thought she wrote it. But the letters were different, slightly uneven, with pressure. It wasn't her handwriting. It was his. I was just flipping through her album that lay on the table. The one where she kept phrases, old Polaroids, scraps of film festival packaging, yellowed bus tickets where she used to draw little hearts next to the departure time. I wasn't flipping like a detective, but like someone trying to remember how it all began. Trying to find myself in her past. In us. And that's where, between pages that smelled like coffee and old glue, I found the napkin. Folded neatly, almost reverently. As if it wasn't just stashed, but left to be found. On it, a familiar phrase. Rules are beautiful because they break us open. We used to write each other phrases like that. It was our ritual. Her handwriting round, light, flowing like watercolor. But this one. Jagged. Harsh. Pressed into the paper. Each word hammered in. Not for beauty. For strength. And I knew he wrote it. The napkin smelled of paint. Not the kind on walls, the kind that hardens on fingers. Acrylic. And tobacco. The one she always said was too harsh. At the bottom, almost invisible, the logo of the cafe. I recognized it immediately. The one where he likes to work, in the half-light where chalk quotes cover the walls and vinyls play. She once said, it smells like beginnings in there. I was sitting on the floor, right by the shelf, holding it in front of me like evidence. But it wasn't evidence. It was a confession. Just not to me. I left the napkin on her pillow. Not as an accusation. Not as blackmail. But as a question. As if I were asking, did you think I wouldn't see? Or, was this how you wanted me to find out? When she came back, she saw it immediately. I didn't pretend to read. I didn't look away. She did. Stopped at the doorway like something had hit her in the chest. She didn't come closer. Didn't touch it. Just stared. Then turned away. There were no words. No excuses. No explanations. But her gaze had changed. Not fearful, distant. Like she'd already left. Only her body was still standing there. And that's when I understood. In these honesty games, the one who admits their pain first loses. And I was in pain. Every letter on that napkin was a needle. Because I knew it was our phrase. But it wasn't written by me. And it wasn't meant for me. I went without calling. She said there was nothing personal there. But her face was on the wall, painted like he knew her better than I ever had. The studio was open. Not just unlocked, ajar. As if someone had just walked in and didn't think to close it. I didn't ring. I just entered. Like a shadow. Like a scheduling error. The smell hit me instantly. Oil. Dust. Something bittersweet like old coffee forgotten on a windowsill. Exactly the scent that used to linger on her fingers in the evening. When she smiled and touched my cheek. When her touch was still alive, light, not forced. He was standing by the window. Back turned. In a paint-stained shirt, one elbow raised as if still working. Maybe he really didn't notice. Maybe he pretended not to. I walked past him. Silently. Not breathing. And on the wall, the portrait. Her face. My chest tightened. Like seeing a rewritten version of a favorite book, edited, expanded, without my permission. He had painted her emotion. As if she was about to leave. But her gaze caught. Not at the artist, not at the viewer. At him. He had become her center of gravity. I stood and watched. And didn't recognize her. She was there. But without me. And for the first time I realized. Maybe I never really knew her. Maybe I only saw the reflection, comfortable, familiar, rehearsed. But he painted her vulnerable. Unshielded. Unfiltered. And beautiful because of it. Not striking. Real. I looked again at the portrait. At the soft line of her lips, the stray strand of hair left messily across her forehead. She never let herself be like that with me. He turned, noticing me. Smiled casually, defenselessly, as if I were no one special. A family friend. That's who he thought I was. And I realized. She hadn't told him anything. Not about our marriage. Not that we still wore our rings. To him, she was free. No footnotes. No subtexts. No, almost divorced. No me. I nodded silently and left. In my head, silence. But under it, words began to stir. Not threats. Not accusations. Questions. The kind that hurt more. Why do you only let yourself be you in someone else's light? Why am I a compromise and he a purpose? Through the glass, I looked at the portrait once more. And I felt myself shift in her story. From protagonist to footnote. From husband to shadow in the background. She came back after midnight. Took off her coat, kissed me on the cheek like a neighbor. Then said, "You don't mind, right? We already talked about it." I didn't realize at first that she had come in. The lock clicked. The soft tap of heels. But not her step. Someone else's. Absorbed. As if she wasn't returning from the street, but from another world. She hung her coat on the hook silently. As if afraid to disturb me. But she knew I wasn't asleep. I always wait. Even when I say I won't. A kiss on the cheek. Light. Precise. As if between us there was only politeness. Not passion. Not pain. Not the years we lived through together. Just two people who were good at pretending to be mature. You don't mind, right? Her voice sounded like we really had talked it all through. As if there were a document. Signed beneath every wound. I said nothing. Not out of pride. Out of fear of slipping from the script. Because if I said it hurts, I'd shatter the facade of agreement. And if I said it's nothing, then who would I be? A husband? Or just a convenient tenant who asks no questions? She went to the bathroom. Barefoot. Leaving not wet footprints on the floor, but scent. Soap. Not the one we used to buy together. A different one. Cheap. Sharp. Masculine. And I suddenly felt afraid of how quickly a body adapts to another body. How easily a scent becomes a new anchor. I stood at the bedroom door. Looked at the bed. Her side rumpled. The sheets creased, the pillow crushed as if she hadn't been there, but a storm had. Mine untouched. Smooth. Quiet. As if I weren't a person but a stage prop. I lay down in the center. Not out of defiance. I just wanted for a second to feel like something in that room still belonged to me. Not by agreement but by right of pain. She came out. Hair wet. Wearing a t-shirt. Not hers. White. Men's. With a small printed phrase she probably hadn't even noticed. Nothing is mine, and that's okay. And it suddenly seemed to me that this wasn't just a phrase. It was a manifesto. Her freedom. My loss. She lay down next to me. For a moment, her hand on my chest. Not a hug. A check. As if to make sure I was still warm. Then she pulled away. As if remembering, we're not a couple. We're an arrangement. I listened to her breathing. Even. As if everything was fine. As if she hadn't come back from another bed. As if our we still existed just quietly like an old photo in a drawer. And inside me grinding. Cracking. Everything was breaking. Silently. Because you don't scream when the person you love is sleeping beside you. Even if they're no longer yours. I wondered. If I said I was in pain, what would she say? That we're adults? That we agreed to this? That love is a privilege, not a duty? And again, I said nothing. Because, strangely, I still hoped that she would come back. Not to the room. To us. The photo wasn't intimate. She was just sitting on the studio floor in silence. But her gaze, it was like she had returned to a place where she was loved unconditionally. I turned on her camera by accident. Or that's what I tell myself. Truth is, I knew what I was doing. I just wanted to touch us. The old us. Before openness, before caution. Before all this you're free, I'm free, when in truth, we're both clinging to air and pretending we're not drowning. The camera was in the drawer under an old blanket. I said I wanted to digitize our photos, and the ones on the balcony in Rome. At dawn in Yaroslavl. Soaked in the rain in Prague. The ones where she laughs, not caring if it looks pretty. But deep down, I hoped for what? To find proof she was still mine? The flash drive was nearly empty. No intimate shots. No kisses. No touches. Just her. Sitting on the studio floor. Barefoot. Alone. The light, morning, soft, almost warm. But it wasn't about the light. It was about how she looked. Her gaze wasn't at the camera. Not off to the side. But into nowhere. Right into that place where people stop performing. Where they can be themselves. Not strong. Not needed. Not needy. I knew that look. It used to be for me. Before the agreements. Before the freedoms. Before us, blurred like a photograph accidentally taken on a long exposure. I watched for a long time. At first, looking for evidence. And then just looking. Because at some point, I stopped seeing someone else's work. I saw a return. She had gone back to a place where she's loved without conditions. Where no one asks who she was with. Where it doesn't matter whose t-shirt she's wearing. Where just being near is enough. And that photo, it wasn't about a pose. It was about recognition. He didn't capture a body. Or a moment. He took off her armor. I turned off the screen. Not because I was afraid, but because it was already too late. What I saw can't be deleted. It's in me now. Like a shadow under the skin. Like the scent of her soap, not ours. Later that evening, I asked. No pressure. No edge in my voice. Who took that photo? She didn't lie. Didn't try to soften it. Just looked at me calmly and said, Julian. He sees when I disappear. And waits until I come back. I nodded. As if I understood. As if I forgave. But in that moment, I was the one disappearing. Not from the room. From her world. She slept beside me. Quietly. Peacefully. And I sat in the kitchen, staring into a cup with the word freedom, and for the first time understood how bitter the price of not holding on can be. At 3 a.m. I found myself in the kitchen again. Like on a timer. Not from sleep, but from the lack of it. The body lay in bed, but the soul didn't. It had long lived somewhere between the light switch and the cool tile under my feet. In front of me was that same mug. White. Ceramic, smooth as compromise. The small black print, freedom. I had chosen it once. Gifted it to her as a symbol. Like, look at us, honest, mature, free. We're not possessive. We don't cling. We only keep the doors open. Now the mug was empty. I stared into it like a mirror with no reflection. Only me cast in silence. I remembered how easily I'd said yes to all of it back then. To the rules. To openness. To space. To trust. We're not things. Love isn't a cage. That's what we said. What we thought. Or what she thought. And me? I just didn't want to be weak. Didn't want to be the one who asks. The one who says, choose me, not just let me stay. Now I knew this silence at night isn't a philosophy. It's fear. Fear being too much. Of being a burden. Of not being the one who supports. But the one who makes it hard to breathe. I remembered her face when she tied her scarf. Fingers confident. Movements quick, familiar. As if it was just another normal morning, not the continuation of that night. The one where I lay next to her in silence. She smiled. Softly. Almost genuinely. As if there was still something between us. As if she truly believed in that comforting myth of adult agreement. Don't worry. We're adults, she said. And I nodded. And my heart didn't flinch. It had grown tired of arguing. It had learned to stay quiet. When the door closed behind her, I stayed in the kitchen. The silence no longer scared me. It had become part of the landscape. I opened the drawer. Found that napkin. At the top, rules we live by. 3 lines in black ink. 3 truths we tried to build a house without walls upon. I reread them. Slowly. As if hoping that this time they'd explain something. And then, I took a pen. And above them, in slightly trembling handwriting, I added. 4. Don't pretend it doesn't hurt. Don't pretend it doesn't hurt. I placed the napkin in the middle of the table. Not for her. For myself. So that when I found myself here again at 3 a.m., I'd remember. Freedom isn't always a virtue. Sometimes it's just a pretty name for the fear of being rejected. I hadn't planned to speak. I wanted to hold it all in as always. But when she walked in happy like she just returned from something real, I knew silence was no longer an option. Because this wasn't about freedom anymore. It was about choice. Hers. And mine. She came at noon. Earlier than usual. No makeup. Her hair slightly damp, smelling of the cool outside air. Grocery bags in hand. A calm face. And a soft, almost cozy scent, something spicy, lavender, maybe cinnamon. As if she'd come back from an ordinary life where we were still us. I bought your favorite tea, she said. With lavender. It should have moved me. Once it would have. Back then I would have smiled, said thank you, taken a sip even if the tea had gone cold. But today, I just looked at her. Not with blame. Not with pity. With clarity. Like someone looking at a person who had made a choice. Not against me. But not for me either. We sat down. The kitchen was quiet. The tea cooled beside 2 cups that never touched. I opened the drawer. Took out that napkin. Rules we live by. With my handwriting. With the 4th line. Don't pretend it doesn't hurt. I placed it between us. She read it. Slowly. Her eyes showing, for the first time in a long while, something close to fear. Not panic. Not guilt. But unease. As if the ground had started to tilt beneath her feet and she wasn't sure whether to jump or to hold on. Did you write this? She asked. Quietly. Yes. And I think that's all I can say right now. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clear. As if there was nothing left to defend, persuade, or explain. She looked at the napkin. I looked at her. You know, she said, I didn't plan. I know, I interrupted. But you chose. She held the cup with both hands. As if trying to warm herself with a heat that was no longer there. And I let go of mine. The ceramic hit the wooden table, not loudly but clearly. Like the final note in a song no one had been singing. So what do you want? She asked. The words hung in the air but didn't demand an immediate answer. It wasn't an ultimatum. It was a request. I didn't know right away. Did I want her to stay because I was afraid? Or did I want her to leave because she wasn't choosing? But then, the words found me. Not loud. Not heroic. Just true. I want freedom to be a choice, to be with me. Not a right to walk away from me. She didn't answer. Just looked at me. As if, for the first time, she heard not only the words, but the silence between them. And I realized. I wasn't holding on anymore. I was simply still here. I wasn't looking for it. It was just lying there on the table as if she wanted me to find it. It wasn't a confession. It was a goodbye. Or maybe an attempt to hold on to something. But not me. She left. That's how she said it. With a light smile, like we were just any couple on a calm Saturday. As if the air between us didn't already carry the scent of something decomposing. I was alone. Walked past the kitchen. Past the mug with the lavender tea. And then I saw it, the laptop. Open. No password screen. No attempt to hide. As if it had been left intentionally. As if the message was meant to be read or lost. But not hidden. The subject was clear right away. Julian. No greetings. No formality. Just him. Just her. I knew I shouldn't read it. But my eyes didn't listen. You never asked who I am outside the studio. Maybe because you didn't need to know. But still, I'm not free. Or maybe I never was. Every word, not about guilt. But about the silence between desires. About a choice that didn't feel like a choice. About a woman who still doesn't know if she's asking to be held or let go. I kept reading. Not breathing. Mark and I chose honesty. But honesty isn't the same as closeness. With you I felt like I could be weak. At home I still have to be strong. I stopped. My eyes didn't want to go further. But my heart already knew this letter wasn't about me. But it was written through me. Through my presence. My shadow. I can't promise you anything. But if one day you feel like I've become a stranger, just say so. You deserve someone who isn't split between. I closed the laptop. Quietly. Without bitterness. Without the need to prove anything. I just let go. Not of her. Of myself from this triangle without sharp edges where no one's the enemy. But everyone is lost. I sat at the edge of the couch. Looked out the window. The snow was melting. People were rushing. And I just sat between the lines. Between being her husband and just a man who no longer wants to be understood. When she returned, everything in the house was the same. Lavender. Milk. 2 cookies in a bag. She placed the tea on the table. Leant forward. And said without looking. I didn't send it. But I needed to write it. For myself. I nodded. Not in agreement, in understanding. We were no longer married. We were living in the pause between letters. where each waits for a reply but no one dares to hit send. Sometimes you think conversation is the salvation, but when all the words have been spoken, what's left is silence. And in it, the thing you were afraid to hear from the very beginning. We talked for 2 hours. No interruptions. No raised voices. Like two strangers brought together by a single shared suitcase. Now honestly dividing it. This is yours. And this. I haven't decided yet. She spoke calmly. About him. About how she felt. About how there she could breathe. Not about sex. Not about drama. But about how with him she felt alive, without having to prove she wasn't already dead. I listened. And each word sounded like confirmation of what I already knew, but hadn't dared to admit. She hadn't felt alive with me in a long time. I asked just one question. Why did you stay? There was no answer. At first. Only silence. Long. As if she didn't know herself or was afraid to say it aloud. And then. Because you're not the enemy. You're my home. And I'm just looking for air. I nodded. As if I understood. Even though something clenched inside, not from hurt, but from truth. Because what I heard was, I'm not love. I'm refuge. Reliable. Warm. But not the place one returns to from desire, only from necessity. We both went quiet. Sat side by side on the couch, leaning forward just slightly. Same posture. As if we were both about to get up. But neither of us did. That silence wasn't a pause. It wasn't suspense. It was a final station. Where the train had already stopped. But you're still sitting because you're afraid to take the step. She looked at the floor. Her fingers tracing the edge of her dress as if searching for something to hold onto. I don't know what's right, she said. I looked at her. Softly. Without pressure. Without hoping to be saved. And if you did know, would you choose me? She didn't answer. Just slightly shook her head. Not yes. Not no. And in that I don't know, I heard everything. No. Just no without the courage to be spoken. I said nothing more. And neither did she. Because the words had been said. But it was the silence between them that became the truest confession. I didn't slam doors. I simply put her mug in a box. Placed our shared photo frame into the cupboard. Not to forget. But to acknowledge I'm no longer holding on. The morning was ordinary. The light slid across the floor, tracing patterns that once felt magical. Now just lines. Just light. Like everything between us, beautiful while it still meant something. She was still asleep. Face calm. Lashes trembling slightly. I looked at her, but not as a part of my life. As someone I had let go of before she had a chance to leave. I took her mug. That one. The white one. With the black lettering, freedom. Once a symbol. Now an epitaph. I rinsed it. Dried it. Carefully placed it in the box. The napkin with the rules went in there too. Her letter to Julian printed but never sent. And the frame with our wedding photo. Not to the trash. To memory. As I stacked the books into a neat pile. She woke up. Sat at the edge of the bed. Silent. Didn't ask anything. As if she already understood. Are you leaving? She finally asked. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know. But because the word leaving sounds louder than what I was actually feeling. I wasn't leaving. I was returning. To the place where I still existed. I just don't want to live where I'm merely endured anymore. She came closer. Put her hand on my shoulder. Warm. Familiar. Like before. But inside nothing responded. As if the past had tried to take my hand again. But I was already somewhere else. Are you angry? She asked. No. Do you still love me? I looked her in the eyes. Not hiding. Not afraid of her seeing too much. I still love the person you were, before you started hiding from me inside other people. She lowered her gaze. There were no more words. And there didn't need to be. I walked out. No slammed doors. No final scene. Just quietly closed the past behind me. The stairwell was bright. Echoing. But my mind wasn't empty. There was silence. The kind where I no longer waited. No longer fought. No longer endured. I chose. Not instead of her. In spite of her. In spite of what we let slip away. In spite of the love we couldn't hold onto. In spite of the version of myself that stayed silent for far too long. And among all the voices that filled the story, for the first time, only one remained.